You know, I often wonder what Jon would say about his 30s. You asked him once about his 20s.
To shut you down. Hey, will you get the f*** out?
This is your intro.
Who told you to fuck up?
Luke Thomas.
Why? Because I'm just chilling. I can't have a...
But you always complain when we don't have intros.
He's right about this.
Okay, I don't want to be in the intro. I want Brian Campbell to be in the intro.
A segment like Pregame Preview, like, it's not necessarily for everybody because a lot of people come with a hidden agenda or a protected ideal of what they should say in relation to what they actually feel. That's why we created this essentially to be a foundation of real talk. And not to get gender specific, but it is kind of like what men do. And that's what we're going to do today. UFC 285, baby.
On Saturday, March 4th, at the T-Mobile Arena in, well, technically Paradise, Nevada, Paradise. Oh, fuck me. Fuck off. Fuck you. Just roll with it. All right, I'll start one more time. Don't say shit. I'm just going to keep it moving. Just going to keep it moving. Here we go. Here we go. 3, 2. On Saturday, March 4th in Las Vegas, Nevada.
We're also known as
Paradise. Maybe the greatest fighter ever returns to maybe, just maybe, win his second weight class title. And that's a big deal. So we're going to make it one and talk about it here on the Morning Kombat UFC 285 pregame preview. That's Brian Campbell, as always, for our pregame guest, the Iceman himself, Chuck Mindenhall, and I'm Luke Thomas.
Do the Iceman.
Gentlemen, how are we? What are we drinking today for the pregame preview?
We don't have anything yet, but I believe we're going to dip into that sweet nectar known as Tiger Thick.
It's pretty good.
Dude, it's actually, dude, as Luke would say, I'm not doing a bit. Tiger Thick's badass. I'm into this. All right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm not going to drink, but do you have anything for me?
You know
here?
what? I actually do have something.
What do you have for me here today?
Check this out.
Oh,
Got
wow.
some watermelon with mint vape.
Oh,
just for you, buddy. Huh?
Watermelon and mint vape.
I can't quit her. She got to hold on me. She got to hold on myself.
I've actually not done much vaping recently.
What have you been doing with your fist? It looks like you're in like a bar fight.
Yeah,
Chuck,
look at this.
Chuck, identify his fist. What's going on here?
Yeah, well,
yeah, that's been dragging. Those knuckles have been dragging for a while now.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a Sean Price lyric. The King's. No, the God's knuckles drag when they I don't know, something.
Wait, why did you say it was paradise? Is it actually paradise?
It actually is called Paradise, that particular portion of the...
that is very weird.
Enterprise.
The T-Mobile is, though? Isn't that right there on the strip?
Paradise, yeah. That part is supposed to be Paradise.
All right.
Great David Lee Roth song, right?
Look at this.
Dude, could you pour... Jesus, what is that?
Wait, whoa.
What is he, a Persian grandfather? What is that? All right,
here we go.
Oh, here, can you put the top back in that and bang?
Oh, my God, I can smell the watermelon on this thing.
We should toast, Chuck.
Yep, all right.
In our coffee mugs here.
Here, hold on, let's toast together.
Arriba, Alberto.
Let's toast the vape.
Padreja.
Here.
Momito.
Toss them here. Yeah.
There it is.
Don't be racist.
Yeah.
All right. Don't be racist.
Yeah.
Don't be racist. Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure. Little stemware. This is good.
Very
nice.
Minty.
Very nice. Different poisons for different folks. Here we go.
Yeah, this is actually pretty gross.
It burns a little bit, but
just burns.
But you know, it's sweet enough to like it's manly, but it's a sweet man. You know.
It is a sweet man.
You look like a sex pest.
I just play one on TV. You know.
All right,
like most
This is why this is my favorite show, by the way. I mean, there's
to be fair,
very little to do with MMA.
Like most comedians, I just play one on TV. You know, there's only 1,000 of us out there. But
I mean, from the word go, I want you to know I see you doing skits and bits.
Hey, we got a big fight card, and it's not just Jon Jones coming back.
I like how he reels you in.
Up and down
Won't stop. Leave me alone.
This pay-per-view fight card, there's badassery, there's matchups, there's storylines, there's sex. But before we can break that down, we do have a little bit of a creed. And I'm not talking about Adonis or March 3rd, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see it in 3D IMAX, Creed 3, all right?
Why are you bringing that up?
Because we have a different
We're talking
creed.
about Jon Jones.
We have a
What are you
different
doing?
creed
Psychic
here
crossfire.
about the, you know, how we talk about these fights, Chuck. Do you remember that? Do you remember that decry?
Yeah, I actually do.
Decry? You mean decree?
Decry.
There's degrees of decrees.
I decry your decree.
There's degrees of
I frankly
decrees
decry your existence.
in my dungarees, to be fair. But
You were trying to get somewhere with this. Where were you going?
Real talk like men do.
I know where he's going. I was trying to set him up and just give him
wow, there goes the drama of that.
Dude, do you know what Paul Craig told us? I can't get over this.
Paul Craig?
Paul Craig told us? This is a true story. Paul Craig told... You know how Paul Craig paints his face blue?
Yes.
Okay, he's Scottish. You're like, oh, that's why he does it. No, do you know why he does it?
Smurfs fan? I don't know.
Dude, Mike Perry suggested it to him.
Come on.
But like
Mike Perry suggested
passionately
There's not some deeper meaning to it.
No. Well, it comes from the Braveheart thing, but like Mike Perry saw, he's like, oh, Scottish guy.
Right.
Put the blue face on. He was like, yes.
Yeah, but the
Where
story
have you been all my life?
When Mike Perry saw it for the first time, didn't he like come running in public and be like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, motherfucker."
Yeah. All right, because he came through the thing.
That's Ocean's daddy. Yeah.
All right, Chuck. Jon Jones is back. 10 years in the making, actually. If you actually look at the first time he teased the idea of going to heavyweight, it was back in 2013.
Wow.
2023, he finally does it. Where,
Is that right? Jesus.
Where is the MMA temperature? Where's the industry temperature on Jon Jones?
You know, man, I think because we were talking about the potential of the Ngannou matchup for the last year before this fight was made, I feel like it's actually come down just a little bit. And part of that, too, is 3 years away.
Because Francis departed?
Well, just because nothing happened with it. I think that there was, it's always like there's always a feel of a consolation in the air when it's not the fight that people are imagining. It becomes something else. But there's also something about the passage of time. And I really believe that more and more when we're inundated these days with like highlights of athletes doing great things on our social media and all that stuff, where Jon Jones just starts to recede a little bit back into the grain. Like he just, whatever he did, if we've been around, we've watched him, we kind of know what he's capable of. But there is a thing when a guy is gone for that long, people tend to forget. And there are new fans. I mean, there are fans that have come aboard that really don't know.
How quickly the fan cycle like repopulates a new batch. Do you know what I mean? You're right. There are a lot of young fans who
Boxing fans are they're in it for
ingrained.
the long haul.
They grew up with it in their living room,
MMA
right?
fans that just cycle through.
That is actually true, and that's something that's kind of borne out over time. I've realized that as mixed martial arts, for whatever reason, always
you have to reintroduce
Yeah.
yourself to the audience constantly.
So is it the flashes of star brilliance every few years, Rousey, Lesnar, Conor, that pull people in and it just doesn't stick? Is that
Conor seems to be able to transcend the churn. It's a churn in news. It's a churn in events. It's just hard to stay relevant and above that fray, especially when you're not competing. Although it's kind of interesting. It's funny, now that you bring it up, I do see what you're saying. Mm-hmm. At the same time, do you feel like there is an element of folks who are like, listen, there's not a lot of huge stars competing in the UFC right now. Now Conor is back,
right?
But Jon being back before Conor was initially the timeline of events here. I do think there's a longing for like big fights, big events, and Jon does fulfill that role.
I think so. I mean, I think that he has traditionally filled that role too. I think the only thing that comes down to, though, other than just the time away, was the kind of boredom, if you want to call it that, over his last couple of fights. They weren't barn burners. They were kind of controversial. I think that you even score one of them for Dominic Reyes
Reyes.
Yes, I mean, so did I. I mean, so there was some controversy.
There was some drama in the
I mean, there was drama, but it was more woodwork figures going against him rather than him going to challenge somebody. I liked what he said, where he's like, I feel fear again, and I believe him on that. A lot of times you're not sure where he's authentic and where he's not. I believe him. I believe that there's a new feeling to this whole venture. So therefore, it kind of kicks right back into the feel of Jon Jones for me. It feels like a Jon Jones fight, like you see him on the poster. You know what I mean? You start contemplating, like you can actually do this without abstract, like who's he going to face? You can actually start to really visualize this fight and him showing up in a bigger form and how he's going to get it done. That's when it kicks back in for me. It's like just remembering like who he was and what that might mean for right now.
Yeah. Fair enough. BC, where are you on the idea of the UFC must be like really happy to have him back, especially now that Francis is gone?
Sure.
But in general, like the one complaint I do hear from casuals, they're not mad at UFC. They're not even. They're just sort of like, when's Conor fighting again? Like they're just waiting for something kind of big. Do you feel like the same question I asked him?
Yeah, I mean, it's a plus for the UFC to get him. It's a bigger plus that they lost Francis, but in some ways we're okay with doing that. They put their feet in the sand the same way Francis did in terms of the negotiation and how short-lived that appeared to be based on Francis's take. But either way, it's easy to let a Francis go without backing up the Brinks truck when you have Jon Jones coming back, and when, to be fair, a lot of people are going to predict him to win. I mean, like, look, I don't know. I've been debating this a lot. Is Ciryl Gane for Jon Jones in this long-awaited comeback, which just happens to be for the full UFC Heavyweight Championship? Like, is that a better, more dangerous, less commercial of all the offerings it could have been Francis. It could have been Stipe for the full title. Is Gane like the least sexy, but also the hardest? Or like, I can't figure out exactly. This is not the matchup I would have picked among all the options. Yet Gane versus Jon Jones, title or not, is a hell of a great fight. And it does feel like, oh, we lost Francis. Well, let's plug Jon right back in there, because something we debate often, Jon's Teflon, people want to love him. They want to see him succeed. Even though he's broken their hearts a million times with these, side steps and setbacks and all that, they want to see him fulfill his greatness. Him stepping right back into that, even with the time off,
I know what you're saying.
It almost, you may have a you all must have forgot situation, but if he comes in and wins back this championship, he's not only the GOAT with a bullet, his viability again is massive.
I do think that Gane would have been maybe the third choice in this situation, because if you had Francis Ngannou, obviously you have the current champion. That makes sense, right? You're going up, you're challenging. I think that would have been one of the biggest fights they would have put on in years and years.
Central casting style-wise, too.
Yes,
like
and I think that's why I wanted to see it so bad. But then I think Stipe would have been the second, because Stipe being kind of the guy who has the most defenses, I think people relate to him as like one of the GOATs of the division and all that stuff.
How about that for a poster? The GOAT heavyweight versus the GOAT.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would have probably been the two. And so Gane then falls into the third spot. That's just how it seems to me. But I initially thought what you thought, which was like, maybe is this the best matchup for him? Like, and then I thought about it. I was like, truthfully, it's everything after round 2 in the Ngannou-Gane fight it should be fodder for Jon Jones, right? Like, you can just look at that and say, like, well, wait a minute. If Francis is able to kind of take him down and siphon his gas tank, I have a pretty clear. Yeah, you could get confidence pretty quickly watching that fight.
Got him into a war when he probably shouldn't have been able to, right?
That is true. So I think from Jon Jones' standpoint, he was, something along the way was like, you know what, I could take this guy. I think initially he probably wanted one of those other two guys, but warmed to the idea pretty quickly. And I think the Ngannou fight really did probably feed into that. You know what I mean?
Well, he's been wanting to come back apparently for some time, but they couldn't quite get the right opponent at the right time, and so it ended up just kind of being here. It's not so much that Gane represents a figure of extraordinary importance, other than he is very relevant as a high-end heavyweight. It's just that Jon's back. Like, let's see who we can make this assembly line work with, and then Gane.
I mean, Gane was one round away from maybe being talked about as something completely different. He wins the third round in that Ngannou fight.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like he's off to the races. It's crazy how it all hinged on, that moment, basically.
You know what part of the Jon Jones experience I'm most excited about, to have him back for the first time in 3 years, and as you said, finally get this long teased move to heavyweight, which could really solidify and cement, like, not just, I mean, the GOAT of GOATs, right? This is the ultimate, is that, look, Jon ultimately, did I just back myself into a corner? And now I'm, no.
I wasn't listening anyway.
That's probably fair, but, I'll
let's hear it.
This is for the people of the Sun, so it'll probably come back around again pretty quickly. Just give me about.
Glad you're here, Brian. You're really contributing to the conversation.
It was great. Okay, I got it now. Look, the great ones have a way of defining, time off, and just sort of like, GSP coming back after 5 years against Bisping, and look at the romanticism in that major moment, and Dom Cruz coming back without ring rust ever, and just sort of plugging himself back in. And, only the greats can do that. I've long compared Jon Jones in a sense to Floyd Mayweather, in that they're both unflappable. Now, Floyd is a little more perfect in his, Jon had closer fights for the most part than Floyd did at times. But Floyd and Jon have always had that ability to press pause on whatever chaos is going on outside, and then dial in and bring it, no matter if they're undertrained like supposedly Jon was ahead of Gustafsson in the first fight, or whatever. It's going to get down to it. He's going to rise above. I want to see if that superpower is still there for Jon. Only the greats seem to have it, the truly all-time greats. And can he activate it right now, 3 years removed, rebuilding his body into a new division? Like, there's part of me that doesn't doubt that Jon can go out there and do exactly what we think he might be able to do. You know what I mean? Kind of figure out this division and dominantly win this heavyweight championship. It's in play, but I think it's in play because, say what you will about him, love him or hate him, throw him in the deep end, that dude's got the minerals, man. That dude has all-time great,
like, he follows game plans. Like,
intangibles.
His coaches,
yeah. For as bad as some of his key intangibles are that keep his life in utter chaos, dude, does he not turn it back on when he gets back in there? I kind of expect him to be exactly who Jon Jones is, which is freaking great no matter what's going on around.
You wonder when he's making, like, I didn't really hear it. Do you guys feel a buzz? Like, does it feel big that he's back?
Surprisingly, no.
Yeah.
Because it's been drawn out. It's been, incredibly drawn out.
That's your.
And I think that takes away
that
the,
might
the,
be-
the
that
wow
probably is
factor,
true.
the surprise factor.
I mean, it still feels definitely significant, and
Yeah.
it feels like the return is. I mean, I'm not gonna say right on time, but like it needed to happen, and it happened at in a way that I think is pleasing to some people and the fans. But I haven't felt like. But this is the point I'm trying to make. In this era of MMA, where there's so much churn from fans to fighters to everything else, is it possible to stay above that fray other than as this transcendent Conor McGregor figure? Like, people often talk about how popular Jon is, and what they misunderstand is, like, he doesn't have a ton of million-plus pay-per-view buy rates as a headliner. He may not have hardly any, I think, as a headliner, but whatever the case. But he had many that were 500K, sometimes 700K,
Right.
sometimes a little bit less, too.
Yeah, he lived in that era.
But he lived in an era where, like, was he the biggest star? No, but he was a consistently delivering one. That's what he was good about. That's a very difficult thing to do. It's not the McGregor and Rousey level,
Right.
but it's a very respectable one in terms of being a box office draw. That's where Jon has typically occupied.
I mean, for a while, I felt like he kind of represented the big time pro athlete in our sport, right? Like in MMA, like remember he showed up to the first Gustafsson fight wearing Nike and Gatorade,
Right.
Like these were like huge moments for the sport.
he
I felt like.
celebrated those moments, it would seem, during that fight week.
Yes, he did. But I mean, like that's the kind of thing that he has,
week.
right? He had a little bit of a transcendence, but it was more that people could look at him and say, like, oh my God, this guy, for whatever reason, they saw him as the legit champion, the guy that they wanted to tune in for. It never did really rise above that. It's kind of stayed there, but I feel like he's part of the broader bubble. Like people definitely know he's fighting and things like that. I wonder when he's walking in, like he always does a lot of kind of theatrics and stuff and gets down and crawls into the cage. If it all starts to come back then where, you know what I mean? Like I want to know how that translates now, because back in the day it always felt like, all right, now we're getting down to business. This is going to be fun.
Well, does this 3 years off re-trigger the love for the game that Jon originally had? That where some of
That's
these more
a good
pure
question.
moments happened, because he loves competing at the highest level. He's got two brothers in the NFL. I mean, this is like
He's got one brother in the NFL.
in general. You get my point. Two brothers that play in the NFL. Like
Is one of them gone now? Arthur?
Yeah, Arthur's been out of the league
Arthur,
for some
okay.
time.
like he's a
Lost track.
competitive junkie.
Chandler's still very good.
How
Yeah,
much
Chandler's very
Luke?
good.
I mean, you've dime store psychologized this man throughout the years covering him, dude. He made this
That's
this
not
time
unfair.
for as much as there's legitimate questions about how his body reacts to all the weight, to how the new division is and all that. Dude, this might also just completely reinvigorate him in ways, because
I don't think so. I mean, we are looking at a scenario where he says that there will at least be two, but that means that there could also only be two, right? There's a scenario where it's just two more. This is one last push. This is one last, let's see what else we can get out of this.
see, we differ on that completely. We've had this argument.
I think he is spiritually reinvigorated. I think the idea that and I'm sure like
is
the
always-
physical rest, he feels better too. What I'm saying is whatever physical skills he has to bring, in my mind, there can't be any way other than a diminished version of what he
So crazy, because this is a tough argument. Anderson Silva for the longest time was always flirting like, this could be the end for me. Like you might be looking the last one. It was when he was on top. It was only when he started to lose that you couldn't shake him at that point, right? Like he wanted to keep going and keep going. I don't know Jon Jones' psychology on this, but he always struck me as a guy who needed to be around it. You know what I mean? And it'd be interesting to see when he loses, especially if he loses in a very close way or controversial way, what happens then, you know?
Right.
Because
That
we
could
haven't
change.
really seen it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Dude, he's a
X factor.
competitor.
Jose, I want to be clear with
No, but
something.
think-
I'm not saying he's going to look like a garbage version. I don't mean that. In fact, I think he'll probably win.
Well, here's
Into
what
my
you're
head.
saying.
Hold on, I'm just trying to say, I've often tried to understand the poor performance, relatively speaking, that he had at the end of his last
Yes.
run.
Yeah.
And I've tried to make sense of that. To me, what I think I come down to is that plus the time off, the aging, 35 years old, not young. And by the way, he's been, just all the training, even if he's had intermittent times of a relatively easy lifestyle, it's still just a lot of wear and tear if you've been fighting since you were 20 years old, basically, then wrestling prior to that. Now I'm going to need the people of the sun till they come back around again, because I've also lost.
No,
my
you
place.
were ultimately trying to like.
Oh,
say,
he'll still look good. I do think he will look. I think win or lose, we're going to be like, aha, yes.
Okay,
he's
well, what
older,
you're basically
he's
saying
slow.
is-
I'd agree with that too.
3 years off, we can't overlook that, and the fact that look, all that adds up. The price, the toll he pays on himself personally outside the cage, partying too much, all that stuff adds up. But if there's any division change which could present a potential fountain of youth scenario because of how large the gap is from 205 to heavyweight, where you're going up against guys that are cutting down to 265. I think, look at what Ryan Bader did reinventing himself in Bellator at heavyweight. There's a potential where I don't think any of the age or grind elements add, especially with the 3-year layoff. There is a plus in that of not taking damage, of sort of being able to heal mentally and physically, although how much can you heal when you're going through a lot of craziness that you cause? I get all that. But you have sort of some of the fears that I don't. Like, I believe...
Okay, what are your fears for Jon as a competitor? And
my fears center more on the idea that is Ciryl Gane, this freak sort of representing like the new age of heavyweight, where you're not just big and you got a big punch. And that's always been a big part of the deal. Why I've always, basically until Ngannou destroyed Stipe to win the title in their rematch, I was like, oh, that's a different type of heavyweight than we've ever seen. Okay, Gane is like that, but in a different way. So I always thought Jon can come to heavyweight and have the same, if not more, success because guys are going to be slower. He has a super long reach. He has a wrestling game where a lot of heavyweights don't. There's just certain elements there where he's going to look like a middleweight in there. The problem here is that Ciryl Gane already looks like a middleweight at heavyweight. So is that just going to be a more active, more dynamic, quicker, just better footwork version of Jon? And he's maybe thinking I'm going up against some slow guys. The same thing I'm thinking here. That's the type of guy that I wonder if could give him a lot of trouble in that. In terms of performance, in terms of turning back the 3-year window, in terms of all that, Jon's a gamer. Like, that's the one thing we cannot take away from him. Love him or hate him. He is a freaking gamer.
Sure, yes.
And I think he's going to come back and give a very good version of himself upon this, and I don't think everybody can. Very few can do this at this level.
It's basically with the same team.
Yeah, I mean, so there's been a lot of talk about him training with Henry Cejudo, which he has done, but his team will tell you that it's still basically the same people. It's Brandon Gibson, it's Wink.
Fairly remarkable.
Well, not Wink, I'm sorry, it's Greg Jackson.
It's been through.
And it's Tusa and this jiu-jitsu coach, and and then he had Stan Efferdine he brought in to bulk up, but it's been more or less the same core of people that it kind of once was.
I will say that out of all the coaches with, when you look at coaching staffs with a specific fighter, they have been very consistent and very good at diagnosing what they're about to face and exploiting those weaknesses. You could probably maybe say GSP with his coaching staff and all that, but
Faraz.
Yeah, Faraz. I mean, they're very good. Yeah. But I think that Jon follows that stuff, and I think that's going to be interesting. Like, he's not just going to get into a gunfight, and especially after watching Gane kind of piece up. Even Tuivasa, he 4-1 in strikes in the end. I know he got in some trouble there, but it was like he quadrupled him in strikes.
Yeah, he kicked
that's
the
what's
shit
always
out
been
of him.
so weird about watching him compete. It's like when you watch Jon in there as an athlete making decisions, you're like, God damn, this guy is a genius.
Yeah.
And then he gets out of the cage and he's like, what the fuck? Like, how can you...
Still got white rim around it.
How can you be, It's like, how can you be so smart here and then such a fucking...
Okay, is it possible that...
You're
I got the
going
retroactive
to stroke out right here in front of us, and I'm not going to do CPR?
Tiger thing coming after me, a little retroactive burn right there. Is it possible that that I just got completely bamboozled by that? It's very possible. But,
Glad you're here, Brian, once again.
A lot of detours were taken, a lot of exits off the highway, just trying to land this plane.
Okay, but let's talk about the other side of things. If he wins here and he captures the title, there's sort of this expected ascendancy as confirmed all-time greatest. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because I already agree. In fact,
already
that's something that I'm sure you guys have covered with Morning Kombat, but he's sort of getting absolved to some of his asterisks too in this moment.
Yeah.
And I think that plays into it. But if he goes in there and he wins the title, I think he'd be the 8th guy to have it in 2 divisions or something like that. But
you mean total of MMA?
Yeah, total something like that. I was looking at that stat at some point this week.
Yeah,
but
there's been 4 UFC champs, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
what are you talking,
just somebody
simultaneous or
who's
overall?
not simultaneous, but I'm talking about just guys who have
got 2 different weight classes.
Yeah, 2 different weight classes.
In which case, BJ Penn and Couture would qualify, but not.
So I mean, I think you have to, because he was already up there, and if you're kind of. I think going up a weight too is also meaningful. Like going up facing a guy like Gane, I think it's inevitable, right? Especially if he looks like an old version of Jon Jones, like the younger version where he just goes in there destructive and puts him away somehow. You know what I mean? I think that would really speak volumes for him.
You agreed, right? Like he wins, he's
because he's already the GOAT. You could have doubts based on drug use through the years, although some of that's getting retroactively cleared to a certain degree. And you could just, I don't know, you could think he lost any of those close matches, all of that. But at the end of the day, he's the GOAT. And if he does this is that long-awaited finishing move in his career. Whereas if he wins this championship, it doesn't matter to me if he loses the next 7 heavyweight fights or never fights again, dude. There's no one else that can top you now, because it goes back to all the stuff I'm saying to sort of pump up about the parts about Jon that are just so intangibly rock solid. And it's like gamer, big moment, rises to the occasion. So I get some of this fear. Like, you asked me what's my biggest fear, and I just wonder, is Gane going to overwhelm him in ways we don't know? Because Gane really is, when he's dialed in, next level. But what about to the idea of the bulk? Is there a chance Jon can come out from 3 years with that added bulk and it just not feel the same way, not as quick in getting off of his punches?
There was a video and someone posted it being like, oh my God, he looks the same. And it was him hitting pads at the Atlanta fight, which was against Rashad, and about 10 years ago, roughly.
That's right.
No, a little bit later than that, maybe sometime around 2014.
You were at that one.
Something like, I was at that one.
You were all over that one.
That was the first one I ever filled in.
That's right. I remember that. I remember that.
At the time, yeah. And then they had him hitting pads recently. Somebody commented being like, oh, it's the exact same speed. And if you watched it, it was like, he was like very obviously slower as a heavyweight. You're like, what the fuck are you looking at? Yes, he
People
looked.
see what they want to see in it.
Yeah, but he did. I mean, he looked fine. He looked mechanically efficient and like obviously a well-trained fighter, but he definitely looked slower.
Yeah.
Like, do you have any of those fears, Chuck? Because, I think he'll overcome any kind of cage rust. But what about the timing? Or is that a significant part?
I do. Yeah. I mean, there's some of that for sure. The other thing is, I mean, he has shown that he can take a shot. He doesn't get into many barn burners, but the Gustafsson fight where he ate some big shots, he's shown that he can do that. But this is a different kind of power. And if he eats a couple of those shots, where is he at? Like, that would be...
Jon's not a heavy puncher, though.
That's true. But it's just, just heavyweight in general. I'm like, we'll see how he kind of handles that if he eats those. But the truth of the matter is, man, he's such a smart fighter in the end that I kind of always count on him nullifying any danger areas right away, or setting a pattern in a fight, shutting something down, or then taking it. Like, I could see him taking it to the ground fairly early, right? Like, and just trying to see if he can get it done there. I think he's that kind of fighter. So I have those. Anything can happen. That's part of what makes it so fascinating, him coming back. But it's very simple for me to be like, well, yeah, but he'll just do this and he'll put it in his terrain. He'll put it in where he's comfortable and dominate the fight that way.
Luke, do you expect Jon Jones at heavyweight to be a consistent finishing threat, or only in the right type of strike? Think a high kick where he catches a guy not looking or doesn't see it coming?
I don't know. It's God, it's so many questions.
Yeah,
just
it is. But that's
really
literally part of the backstory. I mean, part of the whole thing, right? The whole setup.
I think
like
one thing that you just
going.
can't lose sight of for me. Just one, though. If there's one thing that you just go back to, it's like, again, Jon makes, again, very questionable decisions in every area not known as the octagon. But like that fight against Reyes, he knew it was close. And maybe he thinks he won. Again, he did, obviously, in terms of the judges. But, like, he had to know, shit, that was uncomfortably close.
Yeah.
And he hit pause on his whole career. Now, yes, the pandemic and everything else, the tumult of his personal life, which, by the way, we haven't even really talked about. That's, like, a really, like, insane thing that it's still going on and only getting worse, seemingly, like, not getting better. But in general, like, in terms of those physical factors aforementioned.
You dropped your vape, Chief.
Did I?
Yeah. Look, I wonder, related to that, I'm glad you brought up that Dominic Reyes point again, because I remembered the last time I got off the exit.
So what I was going to say was,
where I was.
I think he took a break and he knew he had to, and so his sense of timing,
I agree,
about like when to walk away, and now his sense of timing to return.
Yeah,
he's only doing that. My best guess, he's only doing that because he absolutely feels he's ready for it.
Yeah, he knows when to hold them and fold them. But related to that, we look at, did the division catch up to him physically down the stretch? Maybe. That's why some of those fights were close. But wasn't he fighting in more of a very safe GSP-like protect your title at all costs? Some of that is fueled by the rest of the division catching up for sure, and maybe just the grind of Jon being worn out mentally and physically. But like, I don't look at those and be like, well, that's who Jon was before the layoff, so how much worse is he going to look now? Dude, again, this 3 years could just reactivate that competitiveness, that want to train. And some of it because of the personal stuff, Luke. I think it, in a weird way, it's consistently fueled him to be a better fighter within the chaos. And maybe that's just sort of how he's naturally wired, to just take the drama and all the stresses of real life, push it aside, and focus everything he has on this task. But in light of all the personal issues in the recent years, I don't think he's coming back for just 1 or 2. I think he's coming back to like, that's, I don't know. It's
just weird to me that this guy's coming back and it's a really huge fight, and that's great. I mean, there's plenty of fun things to talk about when you're talking about Jon Jones fighting Ciryl Gane. Any number of wonderfully awesome dimensions to that contest. That's great. But like if this was any other fighter and their only grievance was his last one that was in Vegas where he's, headbutting the cop car and there's this 911 call and there's kids involved and there's alleged domestic dispute, like that would follow them to this fight week or this upcoming fight week every single day. Every single day you'd hear about it. And you just really, and then I know we're entering fight week. I guess we'll have to see how much it happens. But there's been nary a word mentioned about it up until this point.
He's got good footwork.
Got a lot of hits.
Elusive from that sort of thing, too. I mean, he's always got some red tape, right? Like, he's always into every fight. I don't know if people have just accepted at some point, like, that he has this sort of thing to him. It feels like they have, to be honest. Like, where people are like, well, he's always in some kind of trouble, Right. And they just kind of let it go because of that, but... Yeah.
That's why, like, I always make the Manny Pacquiao comparison, but Pacquiao stopped knocking dudes out shortly after he, apologized to his wife, made good, recommitted himself to Christ, and sort of became this humanitarian that he is today. But he wasn't having that same effect or nastiness inside the ring. I think Jon's got to have the chaos in his life to bring out the best of him as a fighter, even though I'm not trying to justify that or, say he doesn't need to clean up. Dude, he's one misstep from it all falling apart at all times. But damn, does this dude have an ability to keep it together? And let's talk about his opponent, Gane, because I think there's a big question based on some quotes that are getting passed around.
Glad you brought that up.
So would you
like me to state it?
Yeah, please.
I'm not sure who the interview was with, but I saw it reproduced by ESPN and other places like the Mac Life. The basic idea, if you haven't seen this quote card in social media, Chuck, is he basically is like, listen, this is Ciryl Gane talking. He's like, look, I'm here. Hand me the phone. So let me read the quote to you very quickly. Right. This is him talking to La Sœur. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. I'm lazy. That's the truth. This is BC also talking. I only train when a fight is announced. I had my fight against Taito Ivasa, barely trained since then, and now I'm back at it since the Jon Jones fight has been announced. Is he talking bullshit? Is he telling the truth? Because here's the truth. That's something that Jon Jones did for long portions of his career.
I was about to bring this up, actually, when we
still won.
Yeah, when we were talking about the first Gustafsson fight, I was like, well, that sounds like Gane now. I mean, it's like whose red flags do wave a little bit, but at the same time, he's being honest, and I feel like sort of that's the heavyweight. I'm not everybody, but I feel like that's a heavyweight division sometimes. Like some of these guys, they just kind of get around to training when it's absolutely necessary. I'm a little surprised, though, to be honest, because he's such an athlete. You've seen him, like, dunking, just out there, just being athletic in general. Like, so I just kind of assumed that
his body never tends to show you any proof of this, though, right? Or is he just kind of saying, look...
Jon never looked like anything other than an athlete. I mean, he was skinny, thin, sort of, wiry, but whereas, to your point, Gane's a little bit more hulking.
But Gane is shredded along with the...
But, dude, if you ever met guys like that, like, dude, they're just... It's like Uriah Faber. It's like, dude, they're just born that way, bro. They just always that way.
They've been...
The truth is, though, like, Gane has looked pretty good every time out, hasn't he? So it's like, if this is his way of doing things and he's looking good once he gets in there on fight night... It only becomes a red flag once it becomes a real red flag. You know what I mean? And I mean, honestly, probably the Ngannou one, because he wore down as that fight went on, was the only time where, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, you probably watched a lot more tape on it, but where I felt like he showed that sort of thing where maybe he could have been in better condition or something like that.
Luke, is there any way you can frame Ciryl Gane's knockout of Taito Ivasa, which became a surprise, like almost fight of the year contender? It was such a weird, wild war, and none of us expected it. It became a war, I want to say, I think more of what Gane either didn't do or some mistakes he made, although, like, you can't discount the heart of Tuivasa. He just finds a way of getting inside on you. Are there any pluses you think Gane pulls from that or could pull from that, rather than just looking at it as, oh, my God, you almost gave it all up, and, and it...
I think he's also got minerals too. I'm not really worried about like what kind of competitor he is, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but do you think he gets even better from enduring that?
Sure. There's no doubt he looks at that. I think he says he's lazy, and again, that by the way could all be trolling.
Right.
He's actually training his ass off, and he wants to think. So who the hell knows? But to the extent that there's any truth to it, yeah, I mean, definitely going through a firefight like that and making it out the other side and getting a great stoppage in the way he did against Tuivasa with all those teeps to the gut and all the body shots, like that has to be really great.
I mean, he's fighting in Paris, right? And I think that was part of it. Like, he wanted to go in there and put on a show as well as win, you know?
Yep.
I think he went in there with a different mindset.
But it's interesting. We've seen two different versions of Ciryl Gane. The one who is in control of the fight and looks like the new age heavyweight ready to take over for the rest, next decade. And then the guy who still doesn't have fully developed skills. And if you can expose,
so do you remember when I said I wasn't like super thrilled with his progression, and people were like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And now we're back at a point where I'm like, "Well, he's telling you he's lazy." Like there actually could be a reason for why the progression is still great, but not where it could be. But here's the thing that you just always go up against. It's like,
yeah, it would be bad. Oh, by the way, like if he loses this fight one-sidedly, right? You could then say, well, the trend was we saw him with Ngannou. Then his last fight, he almost gets taken out against Tuivasa. Now he loses. You could actually be like, well, yeah, that trend's been in play for a minute.
The thing is this. I mean, just ask yourself this. If you had to build a fighter to beat Jon Jones at heavyweight today, like in your mind, how similar would they be to what Ciryl Gane actually is today?
That's why I posed that question.
And there's enough
early.
of a difference between those answers that gives me a little bit of pause.
Like, part of me wants to feel like Gane is the easiest matchup of the three because he doesn't have, like, the three meaning Stipe or Francis, because he doesn't have overwhelming one-punch power that you have to worry about. And if you're part of the allure of Jon moving up to heavyweight is seeing how he reacts to heavyweight power and all that goes with that. But, like, you can talk yourself into that regard, but is there just as likely a chance that Gane could wear down Jones and stop him in that regard? Like, I mean, Luke, do you feel like this is the easiest of the three or potentially the hardest of the three? Because the other two still have that basic default design of Jon being the longer, quicker, smaller fighter moving up and showing us the skill and the movement to out-duel you. Against Gane, though, you may have to be the chaser and the puncher, too.
On the feet, I would say I do think he's a big challenge for anyone. I really believe that. It's just every other part of the game. You're like, on the clinch, that's going to be interesting.
Right.
Now, to that point, Ciryl is very good in the clinch too, but I could see Jon making it like a more of a wrestling scenario, and then certainly in the wrestling itself and in the grappling, dude, Gane had left me wanting against Francis Ngannou. Like sitting.
I think he was just
dude, when he sat when he sat for that heel hook, I was like, dude, what the fuck are we doing?
He has to have improved since then.
I told the story on the post-fight show. I remember, like, I think we're talking 2004 or something, my very first week of training, we were playing around and we were doing guard passing drills. And I just sat for one of the legs for like a straight ankle lock. And my instructor at the time, his name was Professor Green, he came over and was like, stop. He's like, when you get good enough, yeah, of course you can sit back for that. You got to learn how to pass the guard. It's much more important than some kind of bullshit leg entanglement nonsense. And that just sort of stuck in my brain. And when he sat for that, I was like, oh, my God. That is a very bad mistake. What are you doing? I don't know, man. If you do that shit against Jon Jones, like the fight's fucking over, bro. Yeah. Like, you can't do that shit. So, it's like if he just – it's what we said before. The pairing is like who's at the top, who's ready to go. We got to get Jon in there. This seems like a good one. Let's make it for the title, and that'll be what it's about. It's not some giant ordering of the universe coming together to give us a very perfect answer to all of life's heavyweight questions.
Who's the bigger pressure on, do you think? Jones?
Has to be.
Yeah.
Dude, Cyril's lazy. I don't think he gives that much of a shit.
Cyril's already lost the title shot.
Yeah, so I was going to say, though, if he loses this and then Jones's era is now heavyweight, I mean, he's kind of buried, right? Like, he's going to be buried for a little.
Yeah, but it's still heavyweight. You're still one big win away. I mean, really, you are. So. You're always one big win at heavyweight.
Especially given the top.
If Jon loses, what does that do to his legacy?
It depends on the level of the loss.
Okay.
If it's
so let's say it's decision, but it's relatively clear.
Okay, relatively clear, but could it show you that if he continued down the path of rebuilding his body, or if he just shored up that one part of his game? Like, there are elements to this where he loses the decision, you're like, okay,
let's say he's outclassed.
Is he against Jan as the example, right?
Okay, not beat up, but outclassed. A lot of Cyril's opponents end up not beaten, but outclassed.
Mm-hmm. That's when I wonder whether Jon looks at the outlet. He looks at the field, especially at 205, which is a mess. It's a decently fun mess.
He goes back?
It depends on how...
all that time bulking up.
Let's say he gets schooled at heavyweight but doesn't get knocked out and finished, but just feels like, man, I don't know if I can do this. Would he have to get knocked out cold to beat...
I think if he gets knocked out cold, he comes back and gets an immediate rematch, yeah. Talking about the guy who's like, if he wins, he's the greatest of all time. If he loses, he doesn't get an immediate
I guess
rematch.
it depends on the success he has up until the loss, right? I mean, there's a lot of ways this can go.
Yeah.
Well, in any
pretty
case,
fascinating.
it's fun to think about. We've been talking about it for 40 minutes. So let's,
I mean, we can go 2
Are there other
hours on
fights?
Jon Jones.
there are other fights. Let's talk about that co-main event. What a fight this is. I am so happy about this contest. A women's flyweight title fight between Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso. And again, I'll give him credit. At the beginning of the year, Dana Segura put out a tweet saying it's possible by the end of the year you could have 4 Mexican champions. First 2 fought for a title. The first 2 won. Grasso could be the 3rd.
Wow.
How about that? That is incredible.
And didn't we say there was a 4th coming up?
Yeah, it'll be her teammate, Irene Aldana.
Yeah, if she gets the news.
If she gets it, she'll actually be the next champion as well. We'll have 4 champions, 2
man.
women, 2 men. That is a remarkable moment for the growth of MMA. And it's been, I know that the UFC has said.
Like, this is the real moment, though, for Mexican MMA, because I felt like we were always kind of forcing the issue earlier.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So the UFC had, for folks who don't know this, Dana White made this clear that when they first bought the UFC at the time from Semaphore Entertainment Group, SEG, they were like, okay, where do we want to expand? Let's follow the boxing map. UK, Mexico. Got to be, right? Because that's where all the hardcore fight fans are. But then they found out that it's a different map for MMA fans. You have to make kind of your own. UK is coming along, right? That's chugging along in a great way. But Mexico has had a real burst of innovation.
And Kane got out this same year, right?
Yeah, Kane got out the
a big
same year.
win.
So to have 2 champions, a potential 3rd, granted it's an uphill climb. I think we can all agree with that. It's an uphill climb. I just feel like UFC deserves also credit for priming the pump in the way that they did in the market and bringing the product there, and then putting Yair and putting Brandon Moreno on scholarship in terms of the athletes who got to go train at Jackson's Low 10 years ago. Pretty great moment for the sport.
I hadn't really occurred to me, to be honest, man. Like, that is pretty remarkable, because they have tried, I feel like, to be tapping into that market for a while. And it always feels a little forced. Like, they can never get that star, but, I mean, now you've got a bunch of people. That's true. I mean, I just
It's better almost if you have a bunch of different names. I mean, if you've got one big name that's transcending the sport, that's one thing. But
and I'll tell you something. Have you guys been to an event down there?
Mexico?
Yeah,
No.
Mexico. I went to the one in Mexico City, which was just like a fight night. The one that Jeremy Stevens fought Yair, and it ended in an eye poke. But the pop he got, and Grasso was on that same thing, and so was Aldana. It was so loud. I mean, they were just already heroes in Mexico. So. If all of that comes to pass, I mean, that is going to be a big moment for the UFC.
how did C-Level Chuck do down there?
I did okay. It was actually, I had to dodge some beers, though, because they stopped that fight, and people were not happy about that.
Is that the one where Brendan Fitzgerald got under his desk?
Yes, they got. I was sitting right there watching them get under their desk.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Look, there's 2 things happening at the same time in this division right now, okay? Women's flyweight. One, the field is catching up with Valentina ever so slowly, from Jennifer Maia competing on the ground
Now you have
to
somebody that they think's going to beat her, right?
to Tyler Santos getting a disputed split decision loss that could have gone either way. Now you got Miriam Blanchford, Manon Farrow, Tatiana Suarez is coming back. Like, it's just across the board. This division's decent again. Is Grasso a legit threat to the title, or is it more those other ladies that we're talking about here?
Got to be the other ones, right? Grasso has put together a great run. She has earned this opportunity. She is, I think, a threat worth, certainly taken seriously. But it just, again, if you have to build a fighter to beat Shevchenko, how much does it look like Grasso? A little bit. Some of the boxing, some of the great footwork.
Well, they got to be physical.
Got to be physical.
They got to be a good grappler.
They have to be. Honestly, this is why. And Grasso kind of gets after it, but Blanchfield gets right in your face.
Blanchfield would be
right in your face.
That's why people are already like, and this is, you get ahead of yourself. You think Blanchfield, my God, that would be a nightmare. And it would be a fascinating matchup if it happens with Shevchenko, right? For the reason she's young, she's invincible, feels invincible, she's undefeated, like all those things. But the way she fights. Whereas Grasso, I mean, her fight with Macy Barber, for instance, like, she didn't, no takedown attempts. Her last one, is it Arujau? How do you pronounce her name?
Arujau.
Yeah.
She blanked her on one of the judges' scorecards. She won 50-45.
Right. And I mean, but the way that she's winning is the way that I don't think she can beat Valentina this way. Yeah. The way that Santos was able to compete was have a bunch of takedowns, and got the. It was like she blew 9 minutes of control or something, like nearly 9 minutes.
That
of
weight
control.
class, too.
Yeah, and I mean, I just don't see how Grasso gets that done. You know what I mean?
She doesn't have huge power. Like Andrade lost to Shevchenko, but you're like, what's her threat? Big power. Okay, all right, that's a thing. Grasso doesn't have that. She has really clean boxing, good footwork. She obviously did beat, I think she either knocked out or something. She finished off Joanne Wood in the fight prior to the last one. So she got some finishing ability. I knocked it off again. But
that's nature's way of telling you to
I know.
kick
But
that
nothing
shit.
but nothing that makes you like, oh, she's a great fit to beat
Chuck,
Shevchenko.
I have a very important question about Shevchenko for you. Okay.
Oh, here it
I
is.
can say this on camera. It's nothing weird.
Here come the tweets at me. All right,
Is
let's-
the rumors of her demise at 34, if that's even a thing, is it more situational, an opponent based on what we just talked about, Tyler Santos' specific advantage on the ground and her size, or is it overall, or is it just that the Jessica I, Chukagian, and Lauren Murphy class is not as good as this new class? Like, what is it? What's really happening to Shevchenko?
I think that's true. I think that the previous class, I mean, you look at Jessica I, and I mean Chukagian is good, but again, I think that you're talking about a different class. You look at the ones like you just mentioned, Tatiana Suarez. I mean, I had her. By now, if she's not missing time, she would have been a champion, I think.
Yeah, she was. They were calling her the female Khabib.
Yeah.
Folks forget.
And
that,
I mean,
right?
yeah, they forget that's another one that you're just like, man, that's just crazy. That division is shaping up. But those types of fighters, the way that they win, is just such a dictation of wills. Like especially when you're talking about Blanchfield and like this last fight. It's fascinating, man. If Valentina is able to now navigate that, I would have no problem saying that she's the GOAT in the women's MMA, right? Like, it's right now people still talk about Amanda Nunes and all this, but if she's able to navigate this field coming at her or about to come at her.
What he's saying right now, people, is that Valentina doesn't necessarily need a third fight with Amanda and a victory to surpass Amanda all time. She just needs to run the course in her own division at 125. Luke, interesting take. She has 7 defenses right now.
That's a correct take.
Which is the women's UFC record. What's the overall record? Is it 11 by DJ? I believe it's 11 by DJ.
Yes, I think so.
So you're saying essentially if she clears out this class, she'll have the record for most title defenses.
Yeah.
She may be is she the female GOAT if that happens, Luke?
No.
Who you like that chick?
Silly ass argument.
What's that chick you like from Strikeforce instead?
Strikeforce?
Fujimi.
Megumi Fujii?
Fujii.
Yeah, I wouldn't call her a Strikeforce veteran, BC. Much like Jair Bolsonaro, not a Strikeforce veteran.
Yes.
I'll say this,
I thought
though.
you're talking about what's her anyway.
Brazilian striker.
No,
Yeah, she's
the woman who just went into pro wrestling who was with Bellator. I thought you were talking about her.
Oh yeah. You're talking about
OnlyFans.
Valerie.
Anyways. Valerie, yes. Valerie Laredo.
Didn't know what you
Anyways.
were talking about.
Okay.
No, I'm teasing. All right. I will say this. I can see a scenario where the fight could be like a little bit like what we got from Holloway and Edgar, where the scores are lopsided, 50-45, but it's like, it was relatively competitive. Like that, it wasn't a blowout. It's like each round was close, but one was just better.
With Grasso, you mean?
Yeah, like they strike it out and they just box it out on the feet where she gets her legs chopped up and she eats a big shot. But, Grasso's tough and she's going
Here's
to make...
what's interesting, though. Grasso's considered a very good boxer in the women's game. That's a true statement?
Yes.
She's got good head movement. She seems to put her punches together well. But Shevchenko from middle distance is just a marksman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She just is look what she
She
does.
has more weapons in different ranges.
But look what she did to Holly Holm, for example. Just completely controlled the distance and shut her down.
Sure, but she also what? She armbarred Juliana Pena.
What I'm basically saying is that even though Grasso has this strength that's pretty damn good, I think Valentina's just better in that strength to begin with.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think Grasso's strength plays into Valentina's strength. That's
Yeah,
why it's
well
harder to
said,
see.
Chuck.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like the UFC equivalent of, this is not quite true because, again, I do think she earned it.
Yeah.
But it feels the terminology never conveys exactly what you want to convey. It feels a little bit like a mandatory in boxing.
Right.
Something
It
like that
does.
where like the person became the mandatory because they beat all the people they were supposed to. You're not making this because you actually think that Shevchenko is, going to lose, but this person earned the opportunity. You're the champion. You have to defend it.
Right.
That's the responsibility. Let's see what happens, right?
It would feel, and obviously I'm not trying to create like a rooting interest, but it would feel a little anticlimactic, even though it would be a huge moment for Mexico, like we just said. But if Grasso wins and you take out somebody that we're having these discussions about being the GOAT and those potential matchups that we were just talking about, meaning what they could and all this, it would be kind of anticlimactic, I guess, right? Like that would be, I think that now that you have Blanchfield who made her case with Andrade and you got Tatiana there, you want to see those fights.
Yeah.
And then you want the stakes to be as high as they can for those fights.
As Teddy KGB once said, so unsatisfying. All night long, check.
Give that man his money.
Pay him. He beat me straight up.
saw that recently.
That guy hung out in more Turkish bathhouses than you and Doug Crosby combined.
Yes.
Rounders
Yes,
is a great.
It is a great
movie.
I love it.
And by the way, that little
Some of
mini
them don't
era,
hold up. That one holds up.
that little mini era, which also had Good Will Hunting, Had The Matrix. That couple-year run there in the mid to late 90s.
Like 97, 99.
Half-Baked, Fight Club. I mean, that run of... There was some
Fight
badass
Club.
movies in that. Titanic. Yeah.
Boy. He had it for a minute.
I had to go see I was dating a girl at the time who made me go watch the re-release of Dirty Dancing.
Oh man.
Oh, God.
God, I fucking hated it.
Did you have the time of your life, Luke?
No, I did not have the time of my life. I wanted to fucking die.
They put Luke in a corner.
Nevertheless, I don't have a whole lot to say about that fight, but I think the card in general is a pretty great.
Who should fight next for the title against the winner of Shevchenko
Dude,
versus
it's
Grasso?
Blanchfield, right?
I think so.
What about Mano? She's ranked 2.
See, that is
Yeah,
hard.
good.
What about Tyler? She's ranked 1.
No, she needs to get another fight.
You think she needs to pay her coaches, or you're not getting into that?
It's all alleged. We'll have to see. I'll let the courts decide.
Okay, like the IV, it's all alleged, right?
So, again,
The bigger fight would be Blanchfield. When you accept an opponent switch with like 7 days notice, I'm sure you guys have already talked about this, but when you accept that from your perspective and do that, I mean, come on.
She's Jersey tough.
I know.
you have to have like a supreme
Oh,
level
yeah.
of confidence.
Dude, she has an unnatural amount of
pulls it
confidence.
off like
Yeah.
with relative ease almost. I mean,
know, man.
shocking.
I don't understand that. Like but then again, like I don't know. Some kids just whatever sport they pick, by age 8 or 9, they're like, I'm going to be in the Olympics, and
Well,
it's just fact,
hasn't.
and they get there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just one of those just mentalities
And
that
it just
like,
hasn't been there for that division. Like there hasn't been that person that you're like, you circle him and say, watch out as soon as they get to Shevchenko. That's
This
the
feels
fight
like
now.
the bookend of Shevchenko beating the early stage of the women's flyweight division, right?
Yeah.
If she wins, obviously, it would be the first. Okay, you went through that early period.
Yeah.
Here's the second wave, and 2.0 looks a lot.
That's
better
3
than
straight
1.0.
dismantlings or no, there's one fight in between against Aldrich. Did she dismantle her too? I mean, this is a run right now from
It's the room
Aaron
service
Blanchfield.
diaries.
Effect.
What's the not yet effect?
Effect,
You know,
yeah.
get 'em on
It's
the couch.
very effectual. It is.
All right, also-
Luke, this card's great. Can you get any other
So
ones?
how about this one? How about Shavkat Rakhmonov,
this
undefeated?
dude.
I think 17 wins, 17 finishes, undefeated. He has stoppages in every one of his fights. Although was very early to that one, very early
The
to
biggest
that one.
source of his MMA hard-ons. Admit it. Rightfully so, though. Rightfully so.
Taking on Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal, by the way, just coming off that win over Vicente Luque, where he looked fucking great.
He's a hammer again. He put it back together.
He's got his life in order. I know he had a little bit of some issues there, but he looked like he's a suitable competitor. But Chuck,
Yeah.
old Shavi,
You love him.
Shavkat, he's
Love
looking
him.
like the real deal Holyfield, is he not?
He is, man, and I know we have talked about him before, and I've said this before. There are certain guys that have that inevitable thing to them, and he was definitely the guy in that division to me pretty early on, where I was like, watch out for this guy. And I feel like this is the fight, right? Like where people are going to be watching this card. You're going against a guy, I think, who will accommodate him a little bit and the type of fight that would showcase his skills. So I think it's going to be a fun one. It's definitely the bang for your buck on the pay-per-view like this. You're like, you get a guy who's literally making that move. And Bo Nickel, right? Like, so you get a couple of guys like this who are in that space, but like Bo Nickel has a little ways to go. But Shavkat, man, I mean, to me, he's a future champion. So this is the first step, right?
You see, all right over there?
Yeah, sorry.
What'd you see?
I don't have to. I'll tell you off camera. All right.
I know someone who has trained with like Saryukian and a bunch of other hammers and Rakhmonov and all those guys out of that area in various points. And they told me that by far of all the hammers right now in the UFC, Rakhmonov's the most talented.
Yeah.
Damn.
And that came from like a very credible source.
I mean, Islam's pretty talented.
Well, we're talking about the up and coming ones, not the ones who are already.
Not the ones that, not the Usmans, not the ones who are there already.
Not the ones who are already there. The ones who are like sort of the younger guys. BC, do you have my level of like? To me, it's just a question of like which way is Rakhmonov going to win?
Right, because the deal is there that Jeff Neal is like kind of the perfect challenge right now, and he's reborn physically and mentally, and that knockout of Luque is what you want to be coming off of, and he had a hard and split decision with Ponzinibbio before that. But despite all the layoffs, injuries, and some of the missteps in his own life, like this is the perfect challenge, and he might get sliced up. I mean, this just might be an inevitable one-sided dismantling, and that's the lure to see not how good, how great is Shavkat. You know, I mean, that's the same way. Like,
True.
how many times we see a prospect's wheels fall off in the most unexpected way? Romanoff, the heavyweight, did you see him getting gassed out there? No, it happens. No, not to this guy. Not to this guy, because there's a next level craft. There's a poise that feels almost scary. There's an understanding of the game inside of him and an ability to execute that's like, damn.
Dude, he fights not with like crazy aggression, But when you watch the fight from the beginning till the end, and you go back and you're like for what I've done, like when you go back and you review like what path he takes, he fights with such intention.
Yeah.
Now he may set a trap to do it. It may take him some time to pull it off, like a round or two, but he'll do it. And it's that you can just tell he just brings the fight like a crocodile, just grabs and then drags you under. He knows exactly where he's taking you, exactly what his objective is, and he just executes it.
It's the poise and the sense of purpose. You know, some guys like they're banging their chests as they're going through, and you're like, I don't know. He's just kind of quietly doing it. Like it's just that's who he is, man. And I think those
Very
guys
nonchalant.
Yeah,
dude.
it's kind of crazy. This one would be a lot of fun, man, because I think that Jeff Neal is a guy who will go at him. So I think you could see a little bit of danger for a minute, maybe, but it'd be fun to see how he handles it.
Now, if he beats Jeff Neal in the way that we think he might, Jeff Neal, of course, is a knockout threat. He is well trained.
Yeah.
He's not some scrub. That's not what we're
and
saying.
he can fight a high pace. He can drag you in.
He's a very. I mean, this is Rakhmonov, given who he has beaten, stepping up. To be quite clear, but if BC, if he wins in the way that we assume, and we don't want to get too far of ourselves, and we're not saying the answer is next, but then you do have to start thinking, okay, where does he go against the top 5? Because he's not far from a title at that point, right?
And nobody's going to want him.
That's the truth.
Nobody's going to go out of their way. I mean, can anyone get in trouble and they get forced to fight him? Like, who the hell is Colby going to fight, right? Like, who the hell?
Right.
So does that inevitably just pair up together? I don't know. But either way, it's
Colby won't do it.
Is he going to fill the gap? Is he going to fill the role where Hamzat was? Hamzat seemed inevitable as a monster challenge for the title. And now after the missing of weight and everything that's going on, he looks like he might be going to middleweight here. So does that open a major door following the trilogy of Usman versus Edwards? And then obviously you've got a couple guys in between who are deserving. Dude, he's not going to cut the line in front of them, but he's going to be in the same conversation with them.
I'm telling you, man, it's not for a little while, so we'll have to see what happens, because I think I believe what I saw was that Hamzat Chimaev's not going to come back till after Ramadan, so late April, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll have to see what happens when Gilbert Burns fights Jorge Masvidal. I expect Gilbert to win that. And they've been training partners in the past. A Shavkat-Gilbert Burns fight.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh, Lord, buddy. You are talking about...
Well, a lot of those matchups that he could have in the top 5 would be fun to contemplate.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, this is just like we were talking about the other division, but like this one has some real monsters coming up too. And also, if you include Chimaev, right? Like if you're still including him in this conversation, it's pretty nutty, man.
Also, credit to Jeff Neal for taking a fight that, by the way, nobody wanted. And if he wins, dude, you're
going to
talking
be taken seriously.
And also, like that'd be the best stretch of wins in his career, even with the tough one over Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio after Luque, after Rakhmonov, that would be a remarkable stretch for Jeff Neal.
Yes.
Do you have to knock him out to win? Or is there a scenario?
Probably, yeah. It's hard to imagine he's going to control position and all that kind of shit with him. That seems deeply unlikely.
But that's just one of the tasty appetizers on this card.
Yes, it is. BC, we'll go right back to you. He is filling in for Dan Hooker, who had to be removed. Mateusz Gamrot, fresh off the loss to Beneil Dariush, although it was a hard-fought loss, taking on Jalen Turner, who is, I'm trying to think of the right word for Jalen Turner, but it's something like terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Aggressively dangerous.
Here's why he's so dangerous, right? Many reasons, but here's a great one. He is a tall fighter who fights tall, who uses length when he wants, or up close, a differential between knee to chin levels. Like he understands his leverages and his lengths and uses them appropriately, which makes him terrifying.
Now, if Gamrot does Gamrot things, he can still win this, even though I love this matchup. But does Gamrot need to develop an extra gear to truly become a threat for the crown?
I don't know, man. I mean, he still looked pretty good. I just feel like, he's still putting it together, but he's still very good coming off of just the one loss. That's all he's really,
which could have gone either way.
Yeah, it could have gone either way. It's funny how that happens. A guy loses a close fight and people start to push him aside. To me, he's still, I could see him winning this fight. You know what I mean? Like, to me, this is a winnable fight for him. But again, dude, you mentioned these fights. It kind of has the same appeal, as some of these others. Like, you have guys that I think will contend. I think Jalen Turner will contend at some point.
Right.
So it's just fun. It's fun to contemplate. Gamrot too, man. I feel like he's just. How old is he? He's still fairly
31.
Oh, he's a little older than I thought.
Yeah, I got it open here. He's 32, but I screwed up. He had the close win over Sarukian,
yes,
and it was the Beneil Dariush fight.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Both of those were close, but Dariush clearly better, and then he was kind of edging it out over Sarukian.
But like he does need to. True. He does need to go for it a little bit more.
His scrambling and his wrestling, next level. But like Logan Storley, we talked about with Bellator, just not enough punishment, not enough just hammering guys into the canvas. That's been one thing that's been a bit of an issue for him. And against Jalen Turner, it's like, well, on the feet, that's a real bad fight for Gamrot. But on the ground, Turner could be those guys who have long leverages. If you don't know how to fight using them on the ground, that could be like a real bad place to be tall. Actually,
well, dude, 5 in a row for the Tarantula. All 5 by stoppage, 3 by submission. So
he's been on
the danger is heavy. I mean, that
run through it.
Joshua Cuballo. Brock Weaver was a submission. He had stopped Joshua by punches. Uros Medic.
Uros Medic.
Rear naked choke. He stopped Jamie Malarkey in round 2 with punches, and then he guillotined Riddell in the first round, 45 seconds.
That was,
yeah. He's on a great run. He's on a great run. The only question is, how's he going to deal with the scrambling and the attacks of a guy like Gamrot, who is just utterly different than Dan Hooker, just completely different.
It's a better fight.
It's a much better, it's a tougher fight, though.
It is, yes, it's a tougher fight. I don't mean to, like, obviously Dan Hooker's in a different spot in his career, but now you put in a guy who, has like real it could imminently affect the title picture. You know what I mean? I feel like that's always a little bit better. But
hey, Dan Hooker's a project of reinvention often. Would you recommend an IV for him to turn things around?
Yeah.
Too soon to work that into the material?
No, I don't think it's too soon. I think you're all right.
Jesus, take the wheel.
I mean, the thing is, when John Stark shot 3 of 18 in Game 6, against the Rockets, or Game 7, did he stop trying, Luke? Did he stop trying to
no,
make,
kept shooting.
I mean, the team lost, but
Well, if he went 3 for 16, he definitely didn't stop. He just kept fucking going, didn't he?
Yeah.
Last but not least on this main card, how about this one? And this is one thing that we did not do a lot of on our 2023 preview, which, we're just fucking about anyway, but Bo Nickel and the role he's going to play. He takes on Jamie Pickett. His first UFC fight was supposed to happen a couple of months ago. They pushed it back to here. He opens the main card.
Yeah.
Jamie Pickett's about to catch a beating. Like,
oh, yeah.
Seems like a nice guy, but he's being fed to the Lions here.
I mean, what
is the upside for Bo Nickel here? Like,
let me ask you, does this feel like the Aaron Pico rise all over again? Like in terms of the momentum and the feeling of like the moment is now?
No, because Aaron Pico didn't have any MMA fights when he made his debut in New York.
Yeah, but he was so well known in all the sports.
Pro debut.
But all the sports of his discipline, he was so well known, and there was that hype.
Okay, but you have seen Bo Nickel make the transition. He is fucking these babies.
Then what does this feel like right now? Because it feels special. It feels like
it does feel special, and I think part of it is just he's a polished personality. He's been through so many spotlights already 1,000 times. He's already won three national titles.
3 national titles.
And like you saw him, the way he comported on the Contender Series, he's already polished. He feels like he's already there. Yeah, it's like everything about him seems like he's a veteran and he believes in himself, and he's kind of playing the game from elevation. Even as he's picking his shots and stuff, he just has it's all upside. So I feel like if he goes in there and does it, he's going to know exactly how to handle it and parlay it into the next thing. And that's always what the Conor McGregor school was, right? Like you keep planting seeds, you escalate the stakes. Yep. Keep going.
I mean,
you tell the odds makers that they're stupid, like for making you only a minus 1,200 or whatever it is, like favorite. You know what I mean? Like he plays the game the whole way.
2023.
He speaks to everybody.
If the UFC plays it right and keeps him active and he keeps doing the Bo Nickel show, he could have 4 fights by the end of the year and be in a completely different space.
Dude, before his pro debut, he was talking about put me in there with the champ Adesanya before the upset, obviously, but still, like he was like already publicly talking about it.
I mean, if they put him against...
but they all do. Like, Raul Rosas Jr. is like, I'm going to be bantamweight champion in a year. And it's like, I doubt that.
Rosas Jr. was 13, by the way, last time Jon Jones finished an opponent.
Wow.
Just pointing that out.
He just pulled that sword out. Wow.
It's been a while. Jesus.
It's been a minute. That's all I'm trying to say.
In any case, so, like, I get the youthful exuberance is the thing that is there. But, like, given his track record in folk style, and then what he did on the Contender. Oh my God, it was frightening to watch him.
It was. I mean,
these guys up.
Well, he knows, and he trains with guys too. Like his training partner.
ATT.
So I mean, but he knows the minute he gets you into his world, you're in trouble. And that's a great confidence to have, right? Ben Askren got by with that for a long time. Yeah. Like for guys that were just the ones that they're feeding.
This dude is like Ben Askren who can punch your fucking lights
exactly.
out.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like there aren't a lot of weaknesses yet. I mean, that have been identified, but his sublime area is the place he's going to
Chuck,
take
remember
it.
when you were a kid and like your younger cousin who was like a female would have like her 8th grade graduation party or some bullshit? And you had to
remember
go,
when it was like that for
and
you?
you had to go to it, and then but like the good thing that would happen is like a pickup game would break out in the driveway hoop. You know what I mean? It'd be like this weird like 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 of like an old guy and like a kids and like just like a weird mix. But dude, you're Magic Johnson in that game. You're doing like all video game moves, going around the back, like high fiving. That's what Bo Nichols looked like cutting through this Contender Series. So it's like. I don't know. Like, when was the last time I felt this? Hamza, first couple fights, right? Early pandemic, like, oh shit, someone's fruit ninja in the competition, just slicing right through them.
Although he just seems like
Cain Velasquez threw heavyweight in his early run.
Yeah,
he was terrifying.
It's his handling of his station, though. Too. It's just how he's handling himself.
Yeah.
Like you could tell he's playing the game and he's doing it just right. And I think that's what so when you're talking about a potential star, I think he's got that already.
This guy's been talking to local media, since he was in middle school.
Right.
But how's his boxing and how's his chin? Do we know anything?
Well, we don't know much because he doesn't get pushed. So there is a ton of unanswered.
It won't be
the
Jordan
way in
Levitt.
which he looks good so far everywhere, and this is the other part too, the way he quickly chains attacks together, especially from different dimensions, punching into triangles and everything else. Like, and it's just quick. Everything is fast, hard-nosed, delivered with authority. It's like, fuck, dude, take it easy. Like everything is so razor sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, dude. How does he look after 2 rounds of you fumbling that Tiger Thick all over your balls? I don't know, but
I haven't spilled a drop of this, okay?
yeah, except for the one you just cleaned up, right? You're the worst.
Camera catch that. Oh.
He won't be the story. Jon Jones, win or lose, will be the story coming out of this card. But if he gets a quick and effortless finish, you can't. How do you slow roll him? Can you slow roll him? I don't know.
No, the only question is what guys will agree to fights.
Well, he doesn't want a slow roll.
No.
He wants to go right into the big fights. But if the UFC is smart, I would just let him, because I think the appeal for him is big enough right now for him to go through a couple of Jordan Levitts, right? Like that type. Just build him up a little bit, you know what I mean? But,
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, 500 Days of Summer, underrated like rom-com movie.
Yeah.
He does this. He does this.
I have to check it out.
How's the Tiger Thick, you fucking...
Pretty good.
So he's drinking more than you have.
Yeah, I do have to. We have another shoot after this, so I've got to sip it, or I'd be a little sloppy. But I can't talk bad about it. I'm not a whiskey guy,
It's not bad. It's like,
and
it's
it
really not
it
bad.
burns me a little, Luke. It's like having VD in your chest. I got Bobcat back there. At least
It's like having venereal disease
in your chest.
in your chest.
it burns, baby. It burns.
All right, well, on that note, we
It
can
sounds
call
like
it a
he's
day.
drank enough, at least.
All right, quickly, Cody Garbrandt's back in the
Oh my God.
in the prelim featured bout on ESPN, and it's back at bantamweight. He has lost 4 of 5, 4 by stoppage.
It's tough, dude.
What do we feel about where
he
he's
fighting?
at in the winnability? The only fight he didn't get
He's
stopped.
fighting,
Was it Malarkey?
No.
No. It's Trevin Jones.
Jon Jones.
Bantamweight bout. He went the distance against Rob Font, did Garbrandt, but he got stopped by everybody else outside of the one finish against Asan
The
Sao.
Kaikar France one was
Where
awesome,
is
right?
he? Where is Cody right now?
I don't know. It's probably in a similar place to Derek.
Lewis?
No, what am I saying?
Coleman?
Reyes, to Dominic Reyes.
Oh, yeah.
Probably a similar place to that. I think there are probably some irresolvable issues.
That's what it seems like to me. It's weird with him. I mean, that's a pretty similar thing. I think that the UFC would really banked on Garbrandt being a guy, especially after that Dominic Cruz, because it all fell apart after the Dominic Cruz bewitchery that he showed us, where he went in there and just schooled him.
He was incredible.
And it was like the Dillashaw thing. Dillashaw, who's
He
done
was
this to
even
a
good
couple of
early
guys.
in the Dillashaw fight. Remember, he
Right.
dropped him?
Yes. And it's like, for whatever reason, though, from that point on, I mean, it's just like vertigo, right?
Just can't get right.
Yeah.
Can't get right.
And every time you see him now kind of bite down and start to throw, it's like that wince moment where you're like, oh boy, here we go, because he keeps getting caught right away in those types of exchanges. I mean, I don't know how this one to go. I feel like they're giving him a guy. I think that Trevin is coming off of like 3 losses himself. I mean, they're trying to get him a get right fight, but
I mean, he can't survive much more. This might
That's
be.
what I mean.
This might
But
be a
here's the
winner
point.
go
It's like,
home.
even if he wins this, which he might, is realistically building back at flyweight or bantamweight. Does it seem realistic to anybody? It doesn't seem very realistic to me.
No, it doesn't.
not after. I mean, it's a few fights ago, man. I mean, I don't know what it is. You've talked to him. Like, it's just.
He's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy, but something went wrong there. I don't know what it was, man.
I just don't think I think he had a style where when he could knuckle guys into the dirt without really paying for his chin, he was just happy to do it. But you have to correct the mistakes along the way. He never really built in defensive sensibility.
Yeah, but he just looked like a different fighter against Cruz. Like the ability to carry out a game plan, stay disciplined.
If you talk to his coaches, they'll tell you that they had a good game plan for that one that he followed, and that since then he just has not been.
You can see that he gets lured in.
The Munoz fight, wasn't it Pedro Munoz when I think they were trying to be patient, and immediately he got hit with something, and then you could just see it in his eyes, like, I'm going to take his head off. And then as soon as he did that, it was like, bam, he was out.
Munoz is a hard hitter, so that just didn't go well. Yeah. So, I mean, I just feel like, he might win here. It's certainly possible, but I just don't believe a reformation project.
Is there a second life as a wrestler first, leaning into that and getting away more from the, I'm coming out there to throw big and eat big? And
that's the only question only he could answer. I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
In that sense,
Crazy.
In that sense, a bad one.
Chase that high C, right?
Chase that high C, Bragg.
Run that pipe.
All right, Chuck, where can folks find your work? I think that's it.
At themyth.com, MITH. I do some writing there. I do a podcast with your boy Ariel Hawani over at the Ringer MMA
P.T.
show.
Carroll, too?
And P.T. Carroll, yeah. Hey, see, he's going to like that because he thinks you hate him.
I don't know why.
Luke, can I get a 10-second talk on Derek Brunson versus Dricus
Ooh, that is a
Duplessis?
good fight.
Yes, very quickly.
There's another good middleweight prelim bout here.
Dricus takes a lot of risks.
He does. He's like a big lumbering, like
A lot of liberties. Derek Brunson might wrestle him. It's hard to see.
Do we know if he's back on the Cisco blonde hair?
I do not know. It's a good question. I do not know.
Because blonde Brunson has
Cisco.
Yeah, he's got a higher ceiling.
That's true. He has looked better. He has looked better with the blonde hair.
Brian, anything you want to plug?
I mean, I can't say that out loud, right? It's just,
All right.
He didn't say anyone.
On that note, that's Brian Campbell, Chuck Mindenhall. I'm Luke Thomas. This has been your UFC 285 pregame preview for Morning Combat. Enjoy the fights, fuckers.